Big spoilers for Thor Love and Thunder, so watch out. Okay, still here? Good. Gorr the God Butcher was played fantastically by fantastic actor Christian Bale. Although he didn't survive by the end, I couldn't help but wonder a future where Gorr got to team up with some other great Marvel villains to continue his creepy reign of terror. Which old MCU villains would Gorr vibe with most? Which new villains would he form a great team with? Loki? Kang? Knull? These are the questions I'm exploring today, so let's get into it right now. So in order for this to work, I have to come up with a few retcons to not only have Gorr survive at the end of the movie, but also want to continue his reign of wiping out a lot of gods. So let's just say that Gorr made his wish at the end of Thor Love and Thunder and said, "I wish my daughter and I were both alive." That would have worked, right? Any reason why it couldn't? Anyways, with Gorr alive and still able to cause trouble, what would happen to him? I want to imagine a situation where Loki and Gorr team up. Obviously, the evil, older version of Loki would totally vibe with Gorr's whole god-butchering plan. Old Loki would use Gorr to wipe out all the gods and use it to ascend his way into power. But what about new good guy Loki? That's a whole different story. Maybe in this tweaked universe, Gorr now also has the powers of eternity. I mean, why wouldn't he? Gorr's daughter came back to life with new abilities, so Gorr would too in this situation, right? And having those cosmic powers would be vitally important for new Loki and the TVA as they struggle to save their universe against Kang the Conqueror. I mean, as cool as that is, I still would want to see an evil version of Loki paired with an evil version of Gorr. Their ideals are somewhat similar, but their personalities are so different that I think it would be an excellent pairing. Gorr has touched eternity and it granted him one wish, and I'm going to be honest, doesn't Gorr's plan sound so much easier than Thanos' plan for mostly the same result? Thanos had to spend years searching for impossible to find stones when he could have just been searching for that eternity portal and made a wish to either wipe out the universe or even wish his planet back. Thanos, you wouldn't even have had to throw your daughter off a cliff. Next time, do a bit more research because all the Asgardians not only seem to know about the whole eternity wish thing, but also knew exactly where the gate was. Work smarter, not harder, dude. Anyway, that similar mindset and total dedication to slaughtering a bunch of people out of some misguided purpose makes Gorr and Thanos sort of kindred spirits. I think out of anyone on this list, Thanos would mostly just agree with Gorr's plan. He'd wonder why the gods left his planet to die and would assist Gorr on his future endeavors. You know, if they were both alive. We didn't really see how Gorr went about butchering gods, but he seemed to, as Zeus put it, just focus on low-level ones and never hit any bigwigs. But if teamed up with Thanos, then Thanos would be able to drive Gorr to aim a little bigger and probably set off to find Omnipotent City. Okay, when the real Kang the Conqueror comes to our universe to cause trouble, I hope he brings a legion of past MCU villains who he's recruited from different universes to help him. It would be a blast from the past to see our Avengers have to fight different versions of villains they already fought. And with this idea, Kang could bring back Gorr. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you, I just want to see Christian Bale back as that villain. I think on paper, Gorr was very underdeveloped and didn't have a lot of screen time in Thor Love and Thunder, but what saved that flaw was Christian Bale's amazing performance. He was so much fun to watch and deserves more opportunity to play Gorr because he obviously does it so well. So this is a way to bring back another evil version of Gorr, but have him tied with Kang the Conqueror. I mean, if I was Kang, I'd want to recruit the guy who can make creepy shadow demons, wouldn't you? But the question is, would Gorr consider Kang too much of a godlike entity to team up with him? Tough to say, but it should be noted that in the comics, Gorr devised the God Bomb in order to obliterate and wipe out every god throughout the timeline. And right now, since Kang is basically a universe-hopping time traveler, that could assist with Gorr's ultimate goal. So I've just named 3 really big cosmic baddies that Gorr could match with, but let's switch to someone more earthbound for a second. Doctor Doom is one of the best Marvel villains because he has such an Earth-level vibe to him, but he's so smart, so ambitious, and so power-hungry that he often finds himself in cosmic situations. I think if any of the Earthbound villains would be curious in the overall cosmic beings like Eternity, like the Living Tribunal, like the Infinite, it would be Doctor Doom. He would seek out the mysteries of the universe, and that could lead him to to eternity. And if through some science-y, magic, mumbo-jumbo Gorr is resurrected and forces a team-up between Gorr and Doom, so be it. Maybe Gorr could come back not at full power, and Doom could convince Gorr to come back to Earth and wipe out some of the would-be gods who are accumulating too much power here. I know that's a stretch, but I just want to see Gorr on Earth a bit more to put him in a new environment and face other heroes. Alright, back to some cosmic baddies, and this time I'm swinging big and bringing in arguably the biggest cosmic baddie of them all, Galactus. A Galactus and Gorr team up would be an epic storyline. Look, maybe Galactus needs a herald, and Gorr is already bald and slightly silver looking, so that sort of works out. Like, I know the MCU loves to tweak things, so I actually think Gorr would make an excellent herald to Galactus rather than Silver Surfer. Granting him some of that sweet power cosmic would give Gorr a potentially radical new set of powers. But I think Gorr would like Galactus, because the way I see it, I think Galactus in the MCU should be more of a great equalizer rather than an outright villain. Later versions of the character in the comics sees Galactus mostly just try to bring balance to everything, so maybe whenever he does show up, he can see how the gods like Zeus and the others are just running rampant throughout the universe and need to be taken down a peg. That's when he'd resurrect Gorr to help him out. Again, as much as I would love to see the Silver Surfer, I don't want Gorr's time in the MCU to be done, so this would be an interesting development. Could Ultron be rebuilt and turn his sights to the grander cosmic universe? I mean, we already saw that sort of play out in What If when Ultron successfully got a hold of Vision's body and then used the Infinity Stones to conquer the entire universe. Now, I'm not saying that Gorr should team up with that version of Ultron because frankly, that version doesn't need any help from anyone. But what about regular old Ultron? Is there some story that unites Gorr with the sentient evil robot? They both want to destroy a lot of things after all. Of course there's a good storyline for this that makes sense. I'm not just stalling right now to think about it. That would be crazy. Hey, speaking of crazy, isn't it crazy that the MCU and Star Wars projects recently seem to be having a trend of people getting impaled through the chest and they're just fine? Crazy. Okay, fine. No more stalling. Here's the setup for Gorr and Ultron. Oh, darn. Look at that. I have to move on to the next entry. I like the idea of Scarlet Witch surviving her mountain collapse and Gorr surviving his whole lightning bolt ordeal and finding one another, because they both had similar storylines in Phase 4. Both of them lost the person they loved most and found some type of solace in an evil artifact that corrupted them and turned them evil, only for them to turn against their evil nature by the end and ultimately sacrifice themselves so others could live. Like, maybe both of them got into the turned evil and did monstrous things, but then turned good at the last second section of the afterlife that's probably right next to Valhalla. Yeah, Scarlet Witch is there, Gorr is there, Darth Vader is there, oh, and Wenwu is there too. So in the future, when Kang disrupts all the realities and dimensions and starts merging universes and all that, maybe the afterlives are unlocked and people can return. Now, Gorr and Scarlet Witch are on a team to right the wrongs in their life and bond over their shared experiences. Would it be wild? Absolutely. But Scarlet Witch and Gorr were great Phase 4 villains whose stories shouldn't be over. So the Russo brothers stated that once the Soul Stone was taken from Vormir, Red Skull was freed from his prison sentence and could leave. What that means for the future of the character, I'm not sure. He's just a spooky ghost now, wandering the universe, probably searching for a purpose. Well, because he was always obsessed with the Cosmic Cube, maybe now he's focused on cosmic beings, one of which being eternity. Maybe he was lurking around this final Gorr fight in spectral form and somehow possessed Gorr's body to keep him alive. Now you can have Gorr be the vessel for Red Skull and then set out to cause mass mayhem across the universe. Look, I know these are unlikely, but I like what some of these entries suggest, because if Red Skull was able to possess a cosmic villain like Gorr, then that would help bridge the gap between Earth and the cosmos. Then you could have some truly wild hero team-ups like Thor paired with Captain America in order to take down this threat. If there's one being who was legitimately capable of bringing Gorr back from the dead, it would be the Beyonder, a cosmic being of immense power who always likes to take a look at our universe and its people to understand the nature of living and all that. Maybe the Beyonder was watching the whole eternity scene in Thor: Love and Thunder and was so curious about learning why and how Gorr decided to use his wish to save another life that he brings Gorr back to question him about it. Now, Gorr could think that the Beyonder is just another god who needs butchering, but there's also a chance that meeting a powerful cosmic being like the Beyonder, who's clearly above all the gods, would give Gorr someone else to worship and serve. I mean, if you were Gorr, would you rather worship Zeus in his short skirt and vaguely Greek accent, or would you worship the being that could rewrite reality itself? Not a tough choice there. So the interesting thing about Gorr is that in the comics, his sword isn't just a regular necro sword, but rather it's the all black, a powerful weapon created by the god Knull, and it's the first symbiote ever created. The movie obviously skipped over all that, most likely because they weren't allowed to say the words Knull or symbiotes thanks to the Sonyverse. But let's imagine for a second that the Sonyverse fails and folds tomorrow. I know, truly impossible to imagine thanks to all the success of Morbius, and it causes all the characters to get folded into the MCU. Then you can have Knull as the deity who made Gorr's sword and through some of the dark magic could potentially resurrect him. Then you have a situation much like Galactus and Gorr, where Gorr would be Knull's faithful servant. But this is even better because Knull is a god and gives someone Gorr can believe in. Because really that's the next step of Gorr's character arc if we're being logical about it. Thor: Love and Thunder would see Gorr lose his faith in gods and want to slaughter all of them. And then the next movie would see Gorr realize that he was just worshipping the wrong god, and Knull is who he should really dedicate his life to. That'd be cool. Thor movies have followed the normal trend of having one new villain each time for Thor to beat up, but what if the next film switches things up and brings back previously powerful enemies as a team-up? Yeah, you can leave Malekith off that team, but I'm talking about Hela and Gorr. Not only were these two great villains for Thor, but also were played by fantastic actors who deserve more screen time. Plus, most importantly, they actually have a very similar skill set. Gorr has the Necro Sword, which allows him to create shadowy monsters and can travel anywhere he wants through shadows, as well as supposedly helps him hang out in the Shadow Realm. Hela is the Asgardian goddess of death and can summon black swords from the shadows in order to vanquish her enemies. Sounds like a match made in heaven. Not only would they both have a specific connection to Thor, but also they could play out the comic storyline they didn't give to Thanos. In the comics, Thanos wants to court death because he loves it, but they didn't follow through with that plan. Maybe they can give that storyline to Gorr and have him fall in love with Hela and want to serve her? If there's one villain who died that everyone wants back above all else, it's probably Killmonger. The Black Panther villain left a huge impact, and with Chadwick Boseman's tragic passing, there were plenty of people who were saying Killmonger should be resurrected in order to become the new Black Panther. And while that didn't happen, let's still find a way to bring Killmonger back, right? I think Killmonger would work on that previously mentioned Kang the Conqueror team, where the villain recruits different universe versions of different baddies. So along with Gorr, Killmonger could be there too as an evil Black Panther. Then you can have Gorr and Killmonger embark on side missions together. I think these two would have a lot to talk about. Sure, their circumstances are different, but they both lost a loved one and want the power dynamics for those in charge to switch. That sounds like an interesting team up between two villains with semi-aligned goals. Magneto is one of the most powerful mutant villains ever, and his introduction in the MCU is one all of us fans are eagerly awaiting. We want to not only see him do serious, scary damage, but are also curious on how exactly he'll be introduced. It seems likely at this point that the mutants will come from a different universe, so that means whatever universe Magneto comes from should have their own Gorr, right? Let's say in their universe, Gorr wasn't stopped. He used his wish to wipe out all the gods in existence, but after that, then what? He's still this lonely, bitter shell of a man who doesn't have a purpose anymore in life. Well, maybe that's a way to lead him to Magneto. Magneto always wants to prove the mutants are the superior race and not have to bend to the will of regular humans. It makes him a complicated villain, so let's imagine a scenario where Magneto is trying to seek out the being who wiped out a whole species of individuals, in Gorr's case gods, in one fell swoop. It's messy, yes, and I don't think these two would have as much in common like the other villains on this list, but it would be interesting to be in a universe where Gorr actually succeeded in his goals. Out of all the big Marvel villains who haven't been introduced yet, one of the biggest is Annihilus, the tyrant leader of the Negative Zone who just wants to extend his own life and rule over every dimension. This has caused multiple clashes with our heroes over the years, most famously in the Annihilation comic storyline. And sure, the MCU could introduce the Negative Zone when they introduce the Fantastic Four, but I'm wondering if the MCU could combine it with something already introduced. The Shadow Realm was a new concept in Thor: Love and Thunder, and immediately I want to see more of that area. It's creepy, it's dark, it's all black and white, and I would be interested to see if the franchise could pull off tweaking the backstory of Annihilus to have him come from there instead of the negative zone. That way you could tie in Gorr a bit more like a spirit or ghost or something and give Annihilus someone to team up with. We've gotten so many new places in Phase 4, and instead of introducing new ones, I'd love to focus more on the ones we already have, but what do you think? As seen in Love and Thunder, the Celestials were present in Omnipotent City, suggesting that they are gods, which means Gorr would want to butcher them. That also fits with Gorr's comic backstory, as he does like to slay Celestials, and his sword is even Celestial power infused. Now, you know another villain who's Celestial power infused? Apocalypse. Maybe to differentiate him from the Fox version of the character, they could have Apocalypse be this celestial vessel looking for more celestial artifacts. That could lead him to the All Black, and in a twist of fate, it could resurrect Gorr. Yes, that's another big stretch, but Apocalypse and Gorr are both connected to the gods of the universe, and I think it would be great to see them interact with one another. These were all villains that Gorr could team up with, but is there any scenario where Gorr teams up with a hero? I mean, his creepy vibe would turn a lot of good guys off, but imagine something like a Gorr and Moon Knight team up to take down an evil god? Yeah, that would be insane. Thanks for watching CBR. See you next time.